This is the RDA board meeting for May 18th, 2021 at 5:30. In fact, it's actually at 6:10. I want to recognize that we do have board member Burrell, board member Paul, board member Saxton, board member Jackson, and board member Wilson with us today. We appreciate you joining us. Board, we do have one consent item, which is the approval of the April 6th, 2021 RDA board, meeting minutes, but we do not have the May 4th, 2021. We need to table that. So with that, do I have a motion? First, any comments relative to the consent item dealing with the April 6th, 2021 RDA meeting minutes? No input, thank you. Then do I have a motion to approve then the April 6th RDA board meeting minutes?
So moved.
Okay, I have that from Member Ann. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Brian, thank you for the second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, we've now approved the consent items. And we have tabled the May 4th RDA board meetings. We do have one action item. It deals with Resolution 21-4, adopting a policy for granting of agency funds to assist in the relocation costs. I do believe we have Randy on the line. If Randy would like to make comments on that before we go for the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, we did make a couple of changes. The first thing that we did is in the purpose, A, we added the last sentence there that says the creation of the Southeast and Southwest Community Reinvestment Project areas are to be considered as redevelopment initiated projects for these guidelines. And then the chairman recommended in under C, the first bullet point, we now put in there that the affected businesses must be located within an adopted redevelopment project area, and the cost associated with the relocation must have occurred after November 2019, when the Southeast and Southwest Community Reinvestment Project areas were adopted. In addition, we did add the changes that were suggested by Board Member Wilson at the last meeting, and those were the changes that were submitted to us, and those are the changes that we made to the guidelines, which I think addressed the issue that came up in the last meeting.
Okay, Randy, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, council comments.
Thank you, Randy. I know it's a lot of work, and I think it's been refined nicely.
Yeah, I think you captured all the comments I had, so we appreciate that, Randy. Thank you. Okay.
I appreciate the information as well. Do you mind going over just what those project area boundaries are?
Certainly. Basically, they take the west and east side of 1900 from 5600 south to the Harmon's Marketplace boundary. So it does not include Harmon's. And then it wraps around Harmon's, and on the east side it takes in the storage units that are owned by, I can't remember which company, Allied or one of those. And on the west side it basically stops just to the, just about where McDonald's is at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, all these boundaries for those two CRAs were actually north of 5600 along 1900, both the east and west side of 1900. Okay. Any other questions, comments, board members? Okay, hearing none then, do I have a motion then to approve Resolution 21-4, adopting a policy for the granting of agency funds to assist in relocation costs?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Brian?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
And who got the second? Ann? Thank you. This is a roll call vote. Morgan?
Board Member Paul,
Aye.
Board Member Saxton,
Aye.
Board Member Jackson,
Aye.
Board Member Burrell.
Aye.
Board Member Wilson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, board members. Okay. With that, that's all we have then. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
May I just state that the next step will be that we'll need to have a public hearing to open up the FY21 budget, to amend it, and to add the funding to that, and I believe we're going to try to have that scheduled for your June 1st meeting.
Yeah, that was a request to ask staff if they would go ahead and start setting that budget up. So I appreciate that. Having the policies one side, board members, but you got to have the budget also approved to allow that money to be available. So if a request does come in, then from that request, okay, the board members can either approve it or not approve it. If they do approve it, there'll be money in the budget to address that. So we'll get that
You
started.
have to obviously fill out an application for.
Yeah, there's an application process. You're not seeing that with this particular document. We only deal with the policy, but attached to this is also the application process. So they will have.
We know what they're asking.
Yeah. And then you'll have an opportunity, based on the policy, you have to approve all of those, okay?
Did we say it wouldn't be over $15,000?
Yeah, the limit is up to $15,000.
It's, yeah, 7,500 to 15.
Up to 15, that's correct. Okay. Perfect, thank you, Randy. We'll look and work with you to get the budget set up and for our next RDA board meeting. Okay, with that then, do I have a motion then to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, Diane, and I'm hearing Joe for a second.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you. We will now reconvene at 7 o'clock. Make an attempt to go live on YouTube. We try to keep these meetings and all public meetings, okay, very, very public. So
we're new to the area. Can you make introductions so we know who?
yeah, we're going to do that here in a second once we kick this thing off. I just want to make sure. There are restrooms across the hall if you need to go there. We're going to try to wrap everything up by 8:45 if it takes that long. The library does close at 9 o'clock, so we'd like to get all the inputs we can and get your thoughts and comments and questions, okay? So with that then, I want to welcome you all to the Roy City Council Town Hall meeting. This is being done on May 18th, 2021 at 7 p.m. at the County Library in Roy. I want to recognize, if you will, we have Councilmember Paul, and if you just raise your hand as I announce so you get an introduction. Councilmember Paul, Councilmember Saxton, Councilmember Burrell, Councilmember Wilson, and Councilmember Jackson. Perfect. And I'm Mayor Dandoy. Okay, with that, we're ready to start. I've asked this to be done a couple different ways. We're going to ask Steve, the city planner, to basically do a little brief discussion about some things that took place history. I've got a couple of legal things I want to talk to you about, some legislation that's driving a lot of this, and then Steve's going to finish in terms of where we are today, what's being discussed, what's being proposed, and from that we're going to turn it over to you and kind of get some of your comments and thoughts on this topic. Okay, tonight's topic, very specifically, is we're talking about the Front Runner Station particular area, but this particular area also includes the business park by the airport. So it's kind of a little bit all-inclusive that. We sense a lot of the conversation will be focused on the train station, but just recognize the fact is there is some of that that's going to be across the street over here by the business park, the old I-Omega. So with that, Steve, here's a microphone. Go ahead and start, and then I'd like to talk about some legal stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to see how far I can go with this before it stops working, but kind of how did we get here, or why are we here tonight? Back in 2016, we received a grant from Wasatch Front Regional Council, Weber County, and UTA, adding up to about $82,000 to do a area study of both downtown and the Front Runner Station. Went through the process with that. We had a couple town hall meetings, one in this very room and one in the next one to the east of us. The council and planning commission went through the document. It was passed in 2017, December. So from that document, it's called Focus Roy, there was a goals, so to speak, or recommendations that came out of it that, like every planning document, you try to fulfill those goals within, a period of time. So the first goal was to update the general plan. Last time our general plan was updated was 2002. Those should be a 20-year document. Ours is almost at that point. So Focus Roy said, update your general plan. And number 2 was to create and adopt a mixed-use zone downtown and the front runner station. So here we are. The general plan right now is being looked at. The Planning Commission will be holding a couple town hall meetings just like this to go through it. They've had it on their docket probably for the last 9 months, but wanted to have a public meeting where they could sit down in front of people and not do it over Zoom because of COVID. So they waited as long as they could, and now they're happy that it kind of lifted and can do stuff. Second aspect was looking more at the front runner station itself. So recommendation 1 was to look at a vertical mixed use rather than just horizontal. Sometimes you'll see horizontal mixed use where you've got apartments here, commercial here, and a road. So vertical just means you're going to have commercial and residential in the same building. And then the second one of number 2 was to work with UTA to find better ways to do their planning of their property within Roy. So that's kind of how and why. So as I mentioned before, the general plan was part of this grant we received in 2018, again $65,000, to update the general plan and to create a mixed use or form-based code. From here on out, we're going to refer to it as mixed use, not form-based code. So downtown, we've been working on it for a long time. If I can go backwards. Oops, wrong way. Sorry. Okay, so Planning Commission started looking at it in February of 2018. Passed it on to the City Council in 2020. They had a total of 12 meetings. A few of them workshops, work sessions and stuff where they talked about architecture, setbacks, height, stuff like that. Once the City Council got it, they kind of talked about it a little bit and then wanted a steering committee to go through all the public comment that they had before. So that steering committee got together, and it was Joe Paul and Ann Jackson, myself, the city manager, and Randy Sant, the economic development director. We went through all of those comments, modified the document a bit. So we had 9 meetings in between May and September. The city council, it kind of is deceiving. It says February of 2020. They talked about it a few times. Let the steering committee kind of go through it and then picked it back up, but they had a total of 12 meetings on that very topic. Now, originally, Front Runner, where we are now, which is called the Business Park, and downtown were one document. When the council first got it, they split it. They wanted to do downtown first, and then come back to the Front Runner station. So that's kind of, again, where we're at. The council approved the downtown mixed-use ordinance in March of this year. So I'm going to turn some time over to the mayor.
Okay, so let's talk about the legislative piece to this, and I think that's important to understand what's driving this issue. To be honest with you, we didn't get up one day and basically say, let's go up there and see if we can't talk about zoning the TOD or the transit-oriented development process at the train station. It's been sitting for a long time. I will tell you, and we just didn't know exactly what was going to happen. UTA owns about 20 acres down there, and as a result of that, it was kind of what they wanted to do. But then legislators getting really nervous, and if you have not read anything with time legislators get real nervous about housing. And to be honest with you, in Utah today, the medium house is over $400,000. That is absolutely out of control.
Tell the Californians.
It's getting close to California.
Tell them to stay out.
It's not. 16% of the people coming to Utah come from California. If you look at the real numbers says the majority of the people who basically are needing the housing is us. Our children, our grandchildren. Say what you will, think what you might, those are the facts. So the point is, they're contributing to that, and contributing a little bit more to the north end because Northrop Grumman is coming to town with 4,000 jobs. And when them come to town with 4,000 jobs, they're bringing some high-paid jobs to northern Utah. These are the facts. But here's what got our attention. When they start passing this bill, this is Senate Bill 34 that took place in 2019, let me make sure you understand what the language said. It said this: first, the municipality, second line, the municipality or legislative body shall annually review the moderate income housing plan and implementation of that plan. Prepare and post a report of the findings. Every year, we have to basically answer to the state on what we're doing in terms of addressing moderate income housing. That's the law. What really got our attention was the first sentence: planned residential and commercial development around major transit investment corridors. That's the front runner station. And what it's basically saying to improve connections between housing, employment, education, recreation, and commerce. What they're suggesting is that we've got to do something with the growth that's taking place in the United States, or in Utah particularly, and with that growth, how are we going to get people moving around? Then they come in and said this: municipalities that have a fixed guideway public transit station, that is Roy City's front runner station, says shall include a recommendation to either G or H. So Roy City then had a choice. And the choice was pretty simple. You can either go up there and encourage higher density or moderate income house residential development near a transit station investment or the train station, or you can go in there and eliminate or reduce parking requirements for residential developments where the resident is less likely to rely upon their own vehicle. I'm going to tell you right now, both of those are tough. They're tough because this is going to cause change, and it's going to cause change for people living around these front runner stations. Now here's the kicker. This is the one that actually caught everybody cold, but it's in the law. The law says this: state transportation investment funds. Those are the funds that are used by the state, both federal and state funds, to be able to make improvements on state roads. Let me tell you what state roads exist in Roy City. No question about the I-15 interchange. That is a state road. 1900 runs right down, in essence, down of downtown, is all a state road. 5600 in Roy is a state road. And 3500 West, that one road down is a state road. Those are all state roads in Roy City. And interesting enough, and by the way, yeah, that 3500 does link into Midland Drive. So if you kind of take that angle and move up, Midland Drive is also a state road. So what that basically means is this, and this is important. You need to read this law, which has got cities really shaking. It says, state transportation investment funds or transit transportation investment funds, those deal primarily with the train stations, funds may not be used. Let me repeat that. In the law, may not be used in a municipality or an unincorporated county that has failed to adopt a modern income housing plan or has failed to report the implementation of that plan. Now, why is that important?
They have a news story under there. They have a news story under there.
Well, the legislators basically says, we're tired. We've been trying to get the cities and counties to do something about trying to address the challenges that we're facing, and so now what it is, they got a stick. And you can say what you want, it's a stick. Now, why is that important? Today, we are wanting to get money to get 5600 interchange, I-15 interchange fixed and we're wanting to get 5600 widened. We cannot deal with the traffic problems we're having in Roy until you start addressing these major corridors that the state has. If Roy City or any other municipality or county, unincorporated county, does not fulfill the requirements on Senate Bill 34 by its language, then I'm telling you, we could lose that funding. Now you may say, so what? So what? I don't live there. Well, let me tell you something about the so what. May 21st of this month, at 8:30 in the morning, the Utah Transportation Commission is going to meet, and in that meeting, I believe they're holding it in Park City, they're going to make a decision. And the legislator passed this year, and House Bill 433 said that one of the things they want to do is they want to basically widen 5600 and replace our interstate at a tune of $238 million. That decision, if made, and all indications it will be made on May 21st, will set in motion for the first time in a long time, we're going to have a solution to help us fix the transportation problems we got in Roy City. We've got to address the traffic. And if you think there's other ways to do it, I don't know what it is. Unless you can convince Hoover, and you convince West Haven, and you convince Clinton to stop building houses. Because as long as they're basically building houses down there, guess how they're going to get to the interstate? Until they get the Legend Belt Route down there finished. It's going to come through Roy. And you don't have to go very far to find out we got some problems, particularly at certain hours of the day when our streets are parking lots. That's the issue. So with that, next chart. Roy City basically amended that. The Roy City Council. Some of the members of that Roy City Council are sitting here today, but others are not. The Roy City Council then, on November 19th, 2019, in a public meeting, basically in ordinance number 1916, approved compliance with Senate Bill 34. It's in the general plan. That put in motion the city to now deal with it. Because the city council is the they're the legislative component of the city that passes the laws. You want basically a speed limit changed? These people can change that speed limit on the city roads. They're the lawmakers. They're the ones who make those decisions. How many dogs you can have, how many cats you can have, basically how fast you can drive. They're the ones responsible for that, and they passed that ordinance. And when they did, and an ordinance is a law, it's set in motion for the city now to be able to simply say, okay, you better get moving. And they did, which brought us to tonight. A couple other things. Senate Bill 150. Senate Bill 150 really kind of make this happened in 2020. So if you're looking at a pattern where they're trying to address these affordable housing issues, moderate income housing issues, you can see it year after year after year. They're pushing and pushing harder. This is what basically it says. The municipality where the transit-oriented development, that's the train station in Roy, or the other ones, I think there's 16 other ones up and down the Wasatch Front, where it's located must have developed and adopted a station area plan within a half a mile around that train station. You are part of that conversation tonight. Okay? You are part of that conversation tonight. You can take it back there. Perfect. We want to bring all the stakeholders into the game. That is you. That is UTA. Obviously, it's going to be whoever else we find that needs to be part of this conversation, and it defines in the law exactly what we're required to do. I want to indicate to you is that now they're saying is, get it done. And we're trying to work that through as well. Next chart. This one really got our attention. It said this Senate Bill 217 was approved this year. This year. And here's what it says. It says, if you basically have a Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zone Act in your train station area, and they have a name for it, they call it the HTRZ, it says if you're going to put that development in there, then the proposal must meet this requirement in the law. Mixed use, mixed use. Average at least 50 housing units per acre. It's telling you what it reads. And have at least 10% of those housing units in affordable housing. Here's the only saving grace on this particular law, is that last statement. Under the bill, the city could, not shall, could propose a development and zoning around that perimeter station. So they have not enforced it. If Royce City wanted to basically take advantage of this act, we could do that, but we're not. There's a better solution, we think. Hence the conversation, we need your input tonight. Almost last chart, okay? Next chart. This is the UTA policy written in 2014 that says when you're dealing with UTA properties, and by the way, UTA has one of the biggest property ownerships of all of the cities that has a TOD in it, and that's located in Royce. Second only to the 73 acres in Clearfield, the 20 acres they say, best record we can find is 18 acres. We have the second most acreage that UTA owns in Royce City. A big piece of property. They want to do something with it. But here's what it says today that Royce City needs to consider. And it is considered, it's important to understand. It says this: for density purposes, Royce City has been designated as a station community. So it doesn't have the maximum 50 people per acre, 5-story, 6-story buildings. It doesn't have that. What it has is, it says the minimum residential units per acre is 25 dwelling units per acre. So it's half of that number. Some of you may have read the report, probably heard in terms of what the trustee for UTA was saying to us in the meeting. That's important, we heard that. They're hoping somewhere between 25 and 50. Interesting enough, this council will decide that. We'll decide that. That's their job. If you got some employees, they want 40 people per acre if you're doing employees. Okay. So that's the driving factor we're dealing with here. This isn't emotional about anything that suggests, well, these people need this, or we're looking for income. I'm going to tell you right now, we started this role, we started down this path in large part because these laws that are on the books today are driving us to do this. And I'm going to be blunt with you. And then I'm going to get off the plate here and I want to hear what you have to say. Every year that I have been watching this since I've been a council member and since I've been mayor, interesting enough, it seems the legislators is pulling away a little more away from the city's authority. A little more. UTA is a public organization. And if you want to have a real eye-opener, ask the question to Steve and ask him how much influence did Royce City have on the building of that brand new Roy Junior High. The school building, school board, in this case Weber County School District, paid for and built that building. The only thing that Royce City could in fact have any conversation with them, have any influence on that building, is the setback and how many parking spaces. They had to be compliant to Roy's ordinance in terms of parking spaces and setback. That's it. The size, the shape, how many rooms, none of that Royce City had any influence on or had any control. That was been designated by the legislature to allow the school district to manage and do all of that without any input from Royce City or any municipality. Here's my fear. If we don't come up with a solution, as blunt as I can make it, if we don't come up with a solution to this, and given that every year we're seeing our legislators pushing harder and harder against municipalities and saying you've got to deal with this affordable housing nightmare, then they're going to take ownership. And all they would have to do is come in and basically say by law and simply strip the municipalities of controlling these UTA transit stations and let UTA build whatever they want to build. And if that happens, you're going to have a nightmare. I'm going to have a nightmare. We cannot do that. Today, we have control. I'm just concerned about tomorrow. And everything I'm saying is, if the cities are not willing to step up and address affordable housing in this state, I'm telling you, you can read my lips. The fact is, they're going to take it away from us, and they're going to do it for us. And that will be a monumental problem. And before you start to think, well, there's obviously a better solution, let me give you the facts. They're projecting by 2050, now some of us probably won't be around by 2050, but I guarantee most of your children and grandchildren will, the population of Utah will double. We'll go from 3 million to 6 million. And 80% of that increase in population will reside in 5 counties. 5. Weber, Utah, Salt Lake, Davis, and Washington. I don't know what you're thinking and what I'm thinking, but that scares me. Utah County right now is anticipating by that date they're going to have 1 million more people in Utah County. That is absolutely off the charts.
Not without water.
Hence becomes the big issue. And I'm asking that, saying that, making that same comment. I can't figure out how Washington County is dealing with they don't get a pipeline out of the Lake Powell to figure the water solution. These are serious issues, and we have an opportunity to fix them. But more importantly, and please listen to what I'm telling you, we cannot do this in a vacuum. We need your ideas. We need your suggestions. We need your comments. And if you're willing to step up here, give us your name, your address, and let's hear what you have to say. We collectively can come up with an answer. Because I'll tell you right now, I'm not so sure I have an answer. We have some ideas. We want to get your ideas. Let's see what we can do with that. Let me finish the council briefing, and then we're going to get all into questions. Here's Steve. He wants to finish where we are today.
Okay, now that we're scared to death, let's kind of continue on where we are today. So like I mentioned before, in February 2020, they split downtown from Front Runner Station. So in March, we started the conversation. We've had 2 work sessions thus far, and then we're meeting you tonight. So the biggest things, and I'm sorry you can't see it very well, but at the end I'll leave this map up. But to help with some of the concerns, now granted, you have a pointer, I don't. You point to UTA's property. Most of it's in the blue and a little bit of the green east of that. So those are things that if UTA came in and said, you know, we're taking control, we don't have control over those. But everything else within a half mile, we can look at. We talked to UTA. Now, if we can get the density they're wanting in their 18 acres throughout all these properties, we're not going to have tall buildings. We can spread it out so it's not concentrated in one little area. So that's where we can do it, or they can do it. I'll just help them. But we can now start saying, okay, it's going to be 35 feet, 50 feet, 60 feet, or whatever. But by saying that, and these are all divided up into different heights, so the blue is 60. We'll get into why we kind of come up with that number. The light green that's striped is 35. Now in your R1 zone that most of you live in, your homes can be 35 feet. So we're saying these townhomes or these apartments or whatever they build down in those areas can't be taller than what your homes can be. So they may get 3 stories. Or if they're doing just townhomes, 2 stories with a nice pitched roof. The red, which is north of 4,000 in between railroad tracks and the trail, we're saying 60 feet. Hold on. The senior center, the 51 and older, over there in the corner that was built a few years ago that's 3.5 stories tall, doesn't block anybody's view. And below that is even farther down in the topography. We'll go back. And then where we're sitting, over to the airport, we're saying 80. Now, the library's not going anywhere. The school's not going anywhere. And America First isn't going anywhere. So this property really becomes null and void but we make it part of the same project area. A lot of that has to go back to the Focus Roy because it identified this as one of those areas. And then let everything that's east of 19, south of 4,000 next to the airport, let them figure out, 80 feet should give them 7 stories. If it's a hotel or just office space or what have you, let them figure it out. Now, this is where...
Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah, hold on. Come on. Okay?
So there's a green area, it's a square just east of the blue. That's the water tank.
Yep.
Right.
Is the water tank staying there?
Yeah, water tank's not going anywhere.
Right.
We'd have to
Can't
replace
build
it somewhere.
on
Nope.
top. 'Cause that's in our backyard.
Yeah.
Yep.
Some property is unbuildable, like the water tank, it's not going to be. North of where that 51 and older we own, and it's going to be a retention pond, so you're not going to have anything right there off of 4,000. But it's, we got to start looking half-mile around it. Can we get the density they want and not be affected by they saying it's going to be 10 stories tall, we're going to have, that's our fear is they dictate to us what they're going to do, and we don't have any control. If we can pass something that gives them the density within that half mile at a lower height, we're going to be fine. But we can make that decision. Well, I say they can make that decision. Okay, so topography-wise, it's hard to read, but I do have the map up here. Okay, I drew in some lines that are identified. So at the top line that's farthest this way in red is at 4450. The next blue line or purple line, which is 25 feet in topography, is 4425. And then once you get down to where the track station is 50 feet below the ridge at 4400. Then once you go beyond the tracks, below that is another 25-foot drop at 4375. So already you've got a topography that we get to deal with. If we go back to the green map, well, I'll just go forward. Where the green is only 35 feet tall. So you take into account 2675 where it starts going downhill. The homes are almost level with the tracks. The homes that we built over there are going to be 35 feet tall. It's a 15-foot drop already in the track, so you're going to see a little bit. Up along the ridge, 35 feet tall, so even if it was a single-family zone and someone came and built their home, it's going to be 35 feet tall. So no difference in that aspect. The topography comes into play mainly with UTA's property in blue and the red property. So that's basically all I have. So now it's really to leave the time up to you for you to come up and make your comments or concerns or what have you. We can try to address it as much as possible, but they're here to really just to learn from you what your concerns are, what your thoughts are. Okay? So I'll bring up that one map again and just leave it up there so you can see that.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, if you would, please step up to the mic. All we need is your name and address. Tell us what you're thinking. Thank you. Oh, one last thing before we get started. Maybe two last things. I got to ask, if you in fact have everyone over the age of 12 is invited to a drive-through or walk-through at the Weber Health Department is going to give vaccines, the Pfizer vaccine, right here at George Wallen Park. Okay, that's going to happen Saturday from 11 o'clock to 3. Also, and by the way, there's a little piece of paper back there on the bench if you want to grab that. Also, would you please sign up? We're going to pass this around. Put your name on it. We want to get that, but more importantly, put your email address. We collected the last time, and I suspect some of you have got that, about 60 to 70 emails, and we try to make sure you're involved with everything that's going on this topic. So put your name on there, get your email on there. We'll make sure we get you on the list, and what we do, you will know about. Thank you. Name and address. Thank you.
Byron Burnett at 4375 South, 2675 West. My backyards are on the track.
It's not working.
We took the mic.
Microphone's not working.
It's all in, but let's just try to get a little closer to it.
You want me to sing a few bars?
Please.
I appreciate this opportunity, by the way, and I know you don't have to do that. This wasn't mandated, and I know that's true. And I'm not going to go through a lot of stuff I've gone through before. I've been here talking, my first letter to the mayor and the people that put this together was August of 2019. So some of you are familiar with me and know where I'm coming from. I think what I'd rather do is go to suggestions. And one of the suggestions I have right off the bat, and I've heard several of you mention the same thing, is that in the north and the south station district, real life is you're not going to see neighborhood retail in there or businesses in there. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to do a mixed zone when you're not going to have mixed use. And this is my issue. This may be my biggest issue, and I'm going to bring up some other things. I disagree with Steve for once, right, Steve? Steve's not the one that put the sign in my front yard to invite me, obviously. And I worry a little bit because just in between your two meetings, you clearly agreed on 35 feet in that south station area, but it was all of a sudden it went to 40 before your next meeting, and I appreciate Joe speaking right up and saying, no, wait a minute, 35. Well, that could happen. I know Steve wants 3 stories, and he knows I don't. I don't want 3 stories behind me, and I don't want it in the Wilson property above me, because when he's saying a house, yeah, a house is one thing, but 6 townhomes or a big square, flat top, 3-story apartment up on the hill is now 45 to 50 feet above my house, not 35 because of the hill, and it's blocking people up there much more than a single home, which we don't have very many single homes at 35 anyway. My problem is, if you approve this as it is, it takes away your power to defend us and to protect us. Because once it's established, a developer does not have to come before the city council, and it doesn't have to go have any public input because it already qualifies for what you're setting as a zone. So you set that zone, and you can have flat roofs, you can have pitched roofs, you can have, the only thing that manages density is the height. And you can get 25 per acre with 3, I mean, that's all you're looking for in the station area. You can do that with, I've looked it up, and you can get 25 per acre on the 3-story apartments.
That's right.
You go 4-story, you go 40 to 75, and that's including a parking structure.
Right.
And that may be 45 or 50 feet instead of 60, and maybe these people that live up top the hill can see their sunset. Maybe that would work in the station area. You're going to have to deal with 4,000. It's a problem already. That's something you're going to have to deal with. That comes out of city. Oh yeah, we're going to get more property taxes. That's not going to pay for the improvements that's going to have to go in on 4,000 to handle the traffic in and out of there.
Okay.
I think you're already aware of the parking issues and the problem with it probably spilling in, or could spill into neighborhoods. And I appreciated the UTA, Beth Holbrook, being candid about it. She almost warned you, don't do what Murray did. You know, go to West Jordan or South, wherever that good one was, and talk to them. She also reminded you it is your call what happens over there. I don't think Wilson's property should be in here at all. You know, last planning meeting at 5445 South 4300 West, the Planning Commission got a request for very high density for 35 to 40 townhomes on that property. Well, the biggest complaints were hooker residents. That's where the border is. Well, give Ryan Cowley credit because he handled that meeting very well. He's very patient, more patient than I would have been with somebody, one of them. And he offered a suggestion, and I think you're going to see a proposal that you approve that high density, but with the recommendation that on the west side of the slough, which runs through it, next to the homes, you go single family.
Right.
It's the same way on Wilson's property. There's 25 homes that border Wilson's property. Single-family homes. You put 3-story apartments up there, 8-row townhomes, you're blocking their views. It doesn't fit with the neighborhood. It's just wrong. Matter of fact, the only thing that should be mixed use is UTA property.
Okay.
Down below me, I recommend nice townhomes. We might get storage sheds, I guess. If you could ever resolve the access, I'd rather see townhomes down there. You get 18 per acre. It meets the requirements of some of these Bill 34s and stuff because it's increased. You can go homes on small lots at 12 per acre like they've done out in West Haven. There's a lot of ideas that will solve some of these problems, and some of that you solve when you finish the downtown. Some of the requirements you've taken care of when you finish downtown. But you're going to have to do something, and obviously I want my views, obviously I want my privacy. Other people have been on there. There's homes down there on 2450, and the parking lot is only a few feet below. They're not up on the hill. Go look at a couple of them. Nice sunrooms in the back, a nice new deck. That needs to be considered because they've been there for 50 years. I moved in 48 years ago. We'd just like you to do the right thing. And I don't know why you want to go mixed use and lose control over density and growth in Roy by saying 35 or 60 feet, 60 feet, 5 stories, you can put 115 apartments on per acre. That's what you've got in 2 of these areas. It's going to block a lot. That's a lot of people moving in, and you're going to have to find access on Midland. You can't cross the path, right? You can't cross the walking path.
That's right.
Or you got to go up to 1900 to have a second access to that property to the north, right? I just want you to do the right thing. And to me, I'd want to keep control because I wouldn't want, the Planning Commission has a different job.
That's right.
I'll defend Steve. He wants to bring in businesses, and he wants to bring in development. That's what his job is. Your job is to protect us. Don't lose that by changing this mixed use and saying anything goes if it's not higher than 35 feet. Anything goes if it's not over 60 feet and there's right setbacks and certain greenery or whatever. Keep control of that. It's going to make you busier, make it a little harder on developers. But in the downtown area, you just got to keep it low enough so you don't affect those people up on top of the hill. You keep it out of the neighborhoods, and I think you've got that message about parking, and do the right thing there. And that's all we want you to do. We just want you to do the right thing.
Okay. Thank you. Name and address. Thank you.
Larry Taylor at 4272 South, 2450 West. And I've lived here for a long time. And I've seen people try to...
Get closer to the mic.
Seen people try to do these kind of things before. My concern is that the blue area where it says that the tracks will be, is there going to be parking for the tracks?
There has to be parking. UTA is going to require people to have parking there. How they'll choose to do that, we still need to work through.
Because in the past, I went down with my car and parked there and taken the tracks down to Salt Lake, and it's very convenient. But I'm an old person, and I can't be driving down, walking all the way down there in the winter, and walking all the way back. The other thing is, the roads, they're not really built to bring the traffic back up through. And we'll have problems with people speeding up through these areas. The other thing that I've thought about is that, what about 5600 East? You could build a lot of high-rise buildings in there that would be moderate. There's a lot of buildings that are empty even there. I don't want to see the deterioration of our neighborhood. We have a lot of people moving in with families. They want a backyard. They want to have their kids play in it. They don't want people rushing up through their community. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Art. Great comments. Okay. Name and address. Thank you.
Steve Alder, 3901, 2275 West. And we are, well, I'm talking mainly about the Station North area.
Right.
And, I mean, that area right there, quite literally, is in my backyard, because I'm right down there at the bottom of the road, just next to the tracks. And that's my biggest concern right there, because you were saying that it's going to be about 50 units per acre?
UTA is proposing for their property. That property you're referring to is not UTA property. It's all part of what they call the station area.
Right.
So we're looking at all available properties within that half-mile radius of the train station. So the part that's in blue, and Steve, just a little bit to the east of that little part of green is owned by UTA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and, you know, my biggest concern is not, it's going to impact my view from my back door, but that's not my biggest concern. My biggest concern is the density of the units there. If you're talking about, 50 units per acre, that area right there, plus the, adjacent to the blue area there, the green area,
Yes.
you're talking probably about 20 or 30 acres of property there.
Yeah.
If you take 50 units per acre, then we're talking well over, close to 1,000, about 750 units.
Yeah.
Or 1,000 units.
Just for clarification, Steve, the only place that's really looking for height size, first thing at the green area, everything in green in there would basically be limited to 35 feet. So that
35.
typically is going to either be a townhouse or a single-family residential.
Okay.
Steve indicated in the meeting coming in, he says that the normal house residential units today can actually go up to 37 feet. So if you had a two-story or whatever, that's perfectly acceptable. This is actually less than that. It's only allowing 35 feet. So everything in green is 35 feet.
Okay.
The piece in blue and the piece in red, the piece you were talking about, is higher. So that's the only place that you could probably see something to the magnitude of a 25 acre, or what they call dwelling units per acre. Okay.
Okay. Is UTA here?
No, we try to invite them to everything, but they spent pretty much the last meeting, and there is a YouTube video of it,
Right.
where they spent most of the time talking about UTA's interest and what they'd like to do with their property.
Right.
Okay.
And, I mean, had they addressed the safety concerns?
Exactly.
Because, with the building of units in that area, downhill from the tracks, in case of a train derailment or a spillage or something like that, it's going to cause a massive loss of life and property.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't think there's a people in the public safety side of the house, and we don't have our chiefs here, but they would say any type of rail derailment anywhere in that corridor, particularly as you go south where the housing is a little bit closer, would be really problematic for anybody and everybody. So that's a real issue.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern, plus the traffic, because the only road you're going to have access to that is, 4,800 and then 4,000. 4,000 would have to, you'd probably have to turn that into a 6-lane highway.
Well, well, that's not the case.
It's on a average day, because I come out at the end of 2275 on a 4,000, or I used to. I don't anymore.
Yes.
Because the traffic, especially during rush hour, when you got the front runner coming through and letting people off, and you got people coming out of there, plus people coming home from Hill Air Force Base and otherwise. To me, it's just going to be a super massive headache as far as traffic. Because right now, when the front runner comes through there, or one of the freight trains, you got traffic backed all the way up to 1900 and down to Midland Drive. If you add in an additional, 100, 200 units, given the minimum or the maximum, we're talking about some pretty massive backups.
Yeah,
People trying to get in and out of there.
Yeah, traffic is really an issue. You're absolutely correct. And there are some issues associated with traffic that have to be worked out if, in fact, any of these proposals go anywhere further. So, but you're right. There is an issue with traffic. We have to address that.
Plus, is there any way you can fix the potholes on our road?
Where is that public works guy?
That's my main concern. But thank you.
Great point. Thank you. Appreciate your input. Okay. Name and address. Thank you.
I'm Pat Hansen, 3973 South, 2275 West. Couple people have touched on it. With the increase in population density,
Get closer.
with the increase in the population density along the corridor there, my concern is enforcement and control along those back roads. There's only one way in and one way out for vehicle traffic, for law enforcement and stuff like that. We already have an issue of people coming in and stealing property. The last couple of weeks, there was a couple motorcycles stolen, some dogs let out and killed. So there's a lot of stuff going along that corridor. My question is, has anyone considered the enforcement aspect on getting in and out of those areas to enforce that? With, low or moderate income housing or whatever we're talking about here, we all know what that means for the long run. And if we're going to bring that in, I would like to see some of those enforcement concerns addressed. We've talked about cameras along the overpass. There's already drugs down on the overpass. My daughter won't go down there, so it's not being enforced. Sunday with the rainstorm, it sounded like off-road racing. So people out there mudding and ripping it up. So that's what I'm going to ask. If we're bringing stuff in, let's look at some of that enforcement.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Great comment. Thank you. Name and address. Thank you.
My name is Chris Rowley, live at 4023 South, 2225 West, here in Roy. What constitutes affordable housing?
That's a good question. They will indicate to you it's considered by the formula as 80% of the average medium income. So, and it's different amounts for different areas. Salt Lake would have a little bit higher, obviously, because the medium income would be higher, but the cost of living would be higher. But the formula by which the state uses, and I believe federal government, is 80% of the average medium income. So whatever that number is, and Weber County has that, and I can pull that up if you have an interest after the meeting, I'll share that with you, then just take 80% of that's considered to be in that affordable housing range.
Does it automatically tie to like Section 8 or subsidized housing from government?
It can, because that's how some property owners may want to use that. Meaning is that there are grant programs by which they can get subsidies by state, even local, and that can be subsidized in terms of helping a renter, okay, or a property owner to be able to meet that requirement.
And it's required to have 10% of that housing be affordable?
Yeah, well, that's the going-in strategy. But the key is, and this is important because I've had lots of conversations, we don't want a project where everybody in the project has a challenge in terms of meeting the rent. The best solution, and this has been shown over and over again, it's been shown that if in fact you're going to have some portions of that property to be have available to them special funding or grants to the extent of like 10 or 15%, then in essence is that you will not know if a neighbor is in fact being subsidized or not, and it has a tendency the community in those areas lift the person up. There's some real challenges back east with these big projects where everybody's in there, and there's a lot of consequences associated with that, so.
Okay, thank you for that. Just for clarification purposes, the current parking lots for UTA Front Runner Station will not be affected by any of these proposals. In other words, they're not going to convert parking lots into housing.
Not necessarily. The development itself would bring in, UTA would bring in a developer. The developer would have to use the current or the established ordinance by which this council will decide, and they have to come in with a proposal, and they could take up existing parking spaces to put that development together. The city will see that. That's important to know, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they couldn't take up existing parking to accommodate that.
Is it possible the access road going into the parking lots for UTA will be used by residents in the future?
It depends on how the development comes across. If the development comes in and simply says, we're going to give that road to the city to maintain, therefore it becomes a public road, then to your question, yes. But we don't know, we haven't seen a development proposal, so we're not sure. But let me just, I think it's about time we get this on the table, because you need to know this. I'm going to take the screen, and I'm going to take this pointer. And just so there's no confusion here. That's 4,000, and from the middle of that street, 1,000 feet in, is the farthest we can put a residential unit without having secondary access. Let me make sure you understand what I just said. This property right here, and I don't want to be judgmental, but this property has some real problems. It cannot sustain residential units, because to get 1,000 feet from that center of that street to our ordinance is that first building, that metal building, that's all the farther it can go in. And the reason for that was a comment that was made earlier. He said is because of safety issues. We cannot put a residential component down here. We cannot put them in there and run the risk of putting a fire truck or an ambulance down there and having only one way in and one way out. Our ordinance will not allow that. The problem with these two properties, this property here and this property here, is there is no secondary access. And unless UTA authorizes us to basically go across that trail, to be honest with you, the property isn't going to do much. It'll probably always stay farmland. There has to be a second access. That's the plan. We cannot put these developments at risk. So to your question, there's only one way into this property, and that limits any residential development to that first building. That's 1,000 feet in.
Okay.
Anything else south of that won't happen.
Okay, just a couple quick more questions, and thank you very much for explaining this. In the blue area right there, where it could be possibly 60 feet high, that's basically, if I read this right, it's from the access road into the parking lots down to the tracks. Is that there's a big open field right there? That's what we're talking about, right?
And there's a piece, if you, right here on the end, right next to 4,000, there's that big piece of property right here.
Right.
There's a road that runs up along here. All of this area and this piece down in here.
Okay.
It's wherever the level is, that's the height.
Do you have any clue how high the cell phone tower is in relationship, just trying to get some perspective? Because there's a cell phone tower there.
It's 80 or 100, I think.
It's 105 feet.
So it's 105 feet high. And then Steve, you talked about this, but as far as 60 foot, as far as heights, it would only go up 2/3 the way on the cell phone tower, basically.
Well, with the height difference in this, where the cell tower is ground level, probably. It would probably be a little higher because UTA's property is still 25 feet higher than down there, so.
Right.
It may equal up to, but it's hard to say.
And they likely wouldn't build it up to the height of the tracks to build these housing units. They would do it on the ground where it's at now.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we wouldn't, there would no reason.
Thank you very much.
But here brings a good point. If,
raise the height level on the property down where the city is, and to have it 60 feet where the other is, they're better off to have 60 feet below the tracks.
The people still gotta look up though, people look up, you're gonna hit that.
yeah. But here's the key, and please think about this as you come up. What would you recommend? If 60 feet doesn't seem to be right, what's a good number? Get any feel for that?
Is 3.5 stories 60 feet, is that what we determined?
Well,
Usually 5.
it can be. I mean, if your intent was to make it says, I feel comfortable with three stories, or I feel comfortable with 2 stories.
Well, how many feet is 3 stories then?
Well, for 1 story,
There's not an industry standard anymore for stories. It used to be, everybody thought a story was 10 foot.
Right.
But you may have 1 story that's 20 feet. That's why we tried to back away from stories and say maximum footage.
Right.
Because if we say 3 stories, if their first story is 20 feet and then 12 feet on top of that, you've got a monster in front. So we're trying to manage it to maximum height of feet.
Right.
And like the mayor said, if 60 is not it, let's hear some proposals.
Yeah, and to point, average, to your question, average right now, a story is anywhere from 10 to 14 feet. That's the average. And so kind of think about that. But here, please think about this. If 60 feet there is not good, what do you think is a good number? Because this council is wanting to listen to what you think would be the best option, if there's an option available.
Well, as it was suggested before, if we can spread it out, because density is going to be height, ultimately, if you don't spread it out, right?
Correct.
So if we can somehow spread it out so that no one's view is going to be altered, or...
We agree.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Name and address, thank you.
Leon Wilson at 4302 South, 2675 West. I want to begin by saying thank you, Mayor and Council, for your service and time. I've seen firsthand the impact and the commitment required. I'd like you to know that I have intensely studied the process by which this ordinance has advanced to this point, and the following words are not directly focused on any one of you personally. I respect each of you. Diane, would you point out the property that I own? This is the piece of property that I'm going to address.
Get close.
I own the 10 acres south of the front runner station labeled on the map and station south east of the track. So just what she's pointed out. The following is my position regarding my property being included in the proposed rezoning ordinance. To say I strongly oppose doesn't even come close to how adamantly I'm against what is happening here. I understand state law requires a station area plan to be developed and adopted that establishes and preserves the area within 1/2 mile of the fixed UTA guideway station, or in layman terms, the front runner station. The state law encourages higher density or moderate income residential development near a major transit station, as you've mentioned, Mayor.
That's right.
I want to reiterate, the state law encourages, but does not demand high density. Moderate income residential also meet the criteria. The proposed ordinance mandating high density, and as such, so the current proposal is mandating my property to be high density. And as such, I believe tramples on the rights of private ownership like nothing I've ever witnessed. It makes me extremely concerned, as it should every person in this room, how we have ever got to this point. When a few have the power and authority to dictate what is being proposed, requiring my property to be included in this rezone is a form of eminent domain and is 100% governmental overreach. You may have the power, but you don't have the right. Shame on how this has come about. I want my property removed from this rezone, or, now, I want to make this really clear, or provide me the option to determine if high-density housing is right for my property when the time comes to develop. It's not your right to discard nearly 100 years of historical precedents and change this property from its designated use from single-family to high-density. You're trampling on the rights of private ownership. Please keep your sticky fingers off how the use of my property is redefined. It's not your right. If this is really what the city wants, they're going to have to buy my property, and for now, it's not for sale. There is no reason why my property should be included in this rezone. The state has passed no law requiring my property to be high density. The county doesn't require it, so why should the city stick their nose into redefining my property usage? They shouldn't. It's not required to be high density. Hopefully what I've said adequately clarifies my position regarding my property. Thank you for your time.
Name and address.
Melissa Conklin, 4122 West, 4725 South. I'm a transplant. I moved here 20 years ago, and it has grown exponentially since we moved in. And you guys are in a sticky spot. I agree. There's too many dang people here. There really is. My kids have grown up here, and they're young and married and can't afford a house. They just can't. There is no way. You'd have to make so much money to afford a logical payment of some kind. You can't even afford a rental. They can't even afford to buy an apartment because they are so high. They don't make $1,500 a month between the two of them to afford that. It's just not happening. So I get what you guys are going through. There needs to be some kind of housing. Now, you won't like it. Probably a lot of you won't like it. But I suggest townhomes because they would only be 2 levels or below your 30 feet. You can put a lot of them and you can make them affordable for these young kids that are getting married and moving on and having young families. We do have very nice parks. That's where your kids can play. Yes, we would love to all have a backyard, but it's not possible. We have too many people. You also have problems with water. Things like Wi-Fi for us people who like to watch TV streamed. It's not possible out here, but you go out to the town out there.
West
Haven?
No, not West Haven, but Layton Way, and you can get the Google Wi-Fi stuff. Yeah, they know what I'm talking about.
Optic fiber.
But yeah, we need to have better stuff here. And you guys have got a hard job, but we do also need to have better businesses. Our businesses took a hit with the COVID and they need to be built back up. But I work with disabled individuals and they would love to have a job. We just need to have people hire them. I know that the little Taco Time, she would love to open up her restaurant. You know why she can't? She's got 4 employees. And her. Those 4 employees have been working the entire time COVID's been in. The entire time. She can't afford to pay people $12, $13, $14, $15 an hour. She just can't. So it's 10. She can't get anyone to come in there and work. Then there's no jobs. So y'all have a big job. I would suggest townhomes. That's the best way to do it. Do not put up high density, big old towery things that make us look like a slum. Because it's a nice neighborhood. I wanted to keep that.
Thanks. Name and address, thanks.
Colby Hymas, 2578 West, 4850 South. My main concern with the high-density housing, I moved here from a small town in Idaho,
when I moved here to Utah, I was looking for a smaller town. I worked down in Salt Lake County as a firefighter, and I've seen a lot of the high-density housing down there, and that is absolutely not what I want for Roy. Drugs, alcohol, transiency, homelessness, it all comes with the high-density housing, and that's not what I want to see. That's not where I want to raise my kids. I live right below this plan, so that's not where I want to raise my kids. Another concern I have is the schooling. If you're adding this many more people, do we have a plan for the schools? Are they going to be overcrowded?
I guess the question to answer that would be is we'd have to see what a proposal was before we can make a judgment of what that would be. But I will indicate to you, Weber County School District's planning on 3 new schools in West Haven. They've already bought the property and then some, but they're planning to push a bond through. You will see it, okay, in terms of whether or not we vote on it, to basically build 3 new schools. I assume some of those will be, one will be a high school, I heard, more than likely another junior high, and more than likely probably an elementary. So I'm really not the person to explain what that will be. We haven't even seen a proposal in terms of what a development would be yet.
Right, but not in Roy. That's my concern. My kids live in Roy.
Yeah.
Schools are already overcrowded. That's my concern. And then I absolutely do not understand why private property is on there. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. Wilson's Farm is why that's on there. I agree with everything Mr. Wilson said and think that should be removed.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your input. Name and address.
Inger Booth, 4191 South Lily Drive. I have been a resident in Roy. I built my first house on 4244 Westlake Drive. I've seen the expansion. I also worked for Roy City as a part-time receptionist and then as a full-time receptionist. And I've watched several council meetings and delivered packets to people that are now my age. So I've seen what developers have done to Roy over my entire time being here. I did live in Syracuse for 6 years, and I've seen the expansion and growth in Syracuse. And when they did not plan for, the road to go in, now they have plan A, B, and C, because you're going to have to take out farms in order to get the second corridor. We are going to grow. I started doing loans back in 2000. I'm with a lender, Guild Mortgage. We are nationwide. The average median income in Weber County, according to the census report, is $35,000 a year.
80% of that, okay.
So the average home in the state of Utah is $400,000.
That's right.
In my neighborhood, which was first-time homes, and now I've moved back to Lily, those are going for $420,000.
Wow.
So a first-time home buyer in that type of neighborhood would need to make $77,000 a year in order to afford the payment. Right. And then we can't have debt-to-income ratios. The other thing is 4,000. So again, in Davis County, they built bridges and overpasses. We don't have that along 4,000 with the front runner and the train and the school district and everything growing west, because we are the fastest growing state in the nation. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the nation. We are going to continue to grow, so we have to plan for growth. We are going to grow west, which means you're going to have more and more traffic on 4,000. They can go to 31st Street and go up and around, but as we know, 1900 on 4,800 and 4,000, it's difficult.
Right.
Thank you for the roundabouts. That's great, right? So now we have schools. It's a city road, so the state owns 5,600 unless you do a road survey. And I agree. Take the personal property off. Personal property is a fundamental right to be a United States citizen. That's not up to the city. As far as dictating, the state dictating to us what goes on, I'm also a state and county delegate. Cal Musselman is our district representative. Cal should have been here. Next time I talk to Cal, I'll ask why he wasn't.
Okay.
So we can also pass legislation, right, whether we want high density here in Roy or not, through legislation.
That's right.
High density is not going to work there. I agree, it needs to be affordable. What is going in is not affordable, and by the time it goes up, again, the cost to build has skyrocketed exponentially. So all your major builders have already stopped building and are just doing specs to control their costs, right? So the price is going to go up. Wages, again, $35,000 is your average cost. We're
We're going to have the jobs with Northrop Grumman, so unless everybody's going to get their degree and be bringing in that kind of money, or be a GS 9, 10, 11 at Hill, you're going to have a hard time. So your firefighters, your school teachers, your city employees are not going to be able to afford a home, right? So high density, too much traffic, too much problems all the way around. You set a precedent, like several planning commissions have before, that then developers get to come in and have their way.
Okay.
So you have to either make it high density, single family residence, or townhomes, because then the developer comes in and says, we're doing it this way, and you have no say. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you for your input. Name and address.
Hi, I'm Angela Polly, and thank you so much. One of the first council meetings that I attended was I was begging for assistance for $4,000 to cross with the path. I didn't lobby, but thank you. 8 years later it appeared, so thank you.
What's her
So,
address? She didn't give her
the
address.
first thing is while you're doing all these zoning plans, when I moved to my house on 4050 South, initially, if you had Verizon, if you walked from my front room to my kitchen, it dropped your call. And so, please prepare for the technical things, because we can't see how the next 20 years is going to go for technology. But if the road is wider and things like that, there's spaces to put the new technology, whether it's underground, whether it's satellites, whether it's towers. Please be thinking of that, especially because if they're going to be pushing for more people to be at home, our internet choices are limited in a lot of places in Roy. And me and none of my neighbors have the same service because it's very difficult for that. The next thing is I really want, while you're doing this decision making, I want a fire truck to be able to turn around, not just go in and have an exit. Because in Clinton, there's 2 subdivisions that I seriously looked at because they were affordable housing when we were buying. And I freaked out when I realized a fire truck could not turn around in those subdivisions. So, not just, and if you ever do have to call 911, which I did once, it was really nice when they came in, and it was really nice when Terry, the fireman, came in that I knew from volunteering with football. So, having him have the tools to do his job. And then 4,000 doesn't handle the traffic that it has now. There's not even a turning lane down 4,000 through most of the road. And I know that you don't have control over most of it, but it definitely will not handle. So.
Okay, thank you for your input. Thank you. Name and address. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
My name is Janelle Holbert. You probably got an email from me several times.
Yeah, it's okay.
Anyway, so I live on West Lake Drive, which is the longest, most busy one in my neighborhood, right below the tracks. And one of the reasons we did choose where we chose to live was because the tracks were there, and at the time, we only had one car. We had one car for 7 years of our married life. We're going on 15 years, so about a little over, well, I guess a little less than half now. We've lived in Roy, I don't know, a little over 10 years now. We love Roy. I also grew up in a small town from Idaho, and Roy actually does feel small townish, as in the people. The people bring that kind of feel. There's lots of down-to-earth people. I think that Roy is a hidden gem in Utah, and I would like to stay here for a long time if, that happens. I mean, obviously, sometimes jobs and different things change, but right now we have no plan of moving out of Roy. So, my oldest child is 13, and my other ones are little, so my youngest is 5. So, just to kind of give you an idea of my background, I have met all of you, and I know that every single one of you loves Roy, and you want to do what's best for Roy. And I do know that you have been trying to come up with good solutions and creative solutions, and I really appreciate that. And so one thing I'm kind of concerned about, and I have some ideas on, is that on 4,000 South, with Inga was pointing out, you can't turn left when you come out of the, what is it called? I'm losing words here. Yeah, out of the Front Runner, thank you. Someone said that. And just some different things there with Front Runner. There's when everyone comes out of there all at once after, that adds to the traffic. But the biggest thing I've noticed, because I go up there during school, during all different hours, all the time, that's like one of the main roads we drive on. And one of the biggest things is when a train goes, then you're just backed up forever and ever and ever. And I've waited, I time it, and I text UTA every time I have to wait over a certain amount of time. So it's, I waited there at least 10 minutes, and that's there's been longer times when the train gets stuck, but it really does affect the traffic. So that is a big concern, like some people have said already. I have no idea if you're able to negotiate things with UTA about taking care of that area on that road as part of this whole thing. I don't know what UTA is willing to do that, but I would, if we can negotiate things like that, because it sounds like something's going to go in there. The reality is something will go in this area, and so I would love UTA to work with us on, a bridge of some sort or some way to not have to everybody stop every time a train comes through. If it was just the Front Runner, it wouldn't be a big deal because it comes and goes quickly. But, we have the regular tracks there as well. So that's kind of my main concern, but I'm optimistic about the future, and I think I am excited about this area. I think with all the suggestions people have made that we can make it great, and that it'll be something my kids can enjoy in the future. And so, thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate your input. Okay. Name and address. Thank you.
Michelle Johnson, 4163 South, 2175 West.
Thank you.
I live across the street from George Wallen Park. I've lived there for 32 years. I've seen a lot of changes happening, but I'm really confused at why the business park would be included in this proposal. We're not talking about building any townhomes here. We're not talking about doing any kind of development. So why would we even include that in there at this time? It does not make any sense. We spent a lot of money developing the park, developing the school, developing the library. Why would we add the option in that we could go add townhouses to that space that our kids are enjoying?
Good comment.
I would like to request that that area be removed from this proposal.
Okay.
Also, I would like to know if there's been any thought about adding police protection for that area, if we're going to be adding the quantity of people that we've been talking about tonight. And I think that some consideration should be given to make it be dedicated police support for that area, not somebody that's going to be way down west when there's a problem up in that area, because I think we can all agree that it's going to be continuous. In the length of time I've lived there, from the beginning, you could leave your doors open, you never had to worry about locking anything. Now, it's a given that every night, there's going to be somebody checking your cars if they're not in a garage, trying to see if there's any money that they can get or any valuables. If you don't believe me, I have video camera. I see it. And every car gets it. They just go down the street, boom, boom, check the car doors, and they're on their way to the next door. The door happens to open, they're in there and out in seconds. They walk down the road with backpacks on. They fill those backpacks with whatever they find that they decide to help themselves with. If we did have that dedicated police protection, we could get on top of it, we could get it out of there. We never had that before, but now with all the transients, it's steady. So I just wanted to make sure that people are aware of that. Also, I have a question. I heard that at the end of 4150 South, so the opposite end from North Park, I heard that they're going to make a road down into Front Runner from there. I'd like to know if that's true.
We have seen no proposal at this moment. We know there's a dirt road in that area, and remember, one of the issues the development would have to consider has to have 2 access points. The UTA will not be exception if there was a development in there from that 1,000 foot from that 4,000, and so there has to be a secondary access. But we're not aware of any plans, we haven't seen any development plans to do anything with that dirt road that's there.
But we know it's going to happen. We
don't
know it
know.
has to happen.
Well, we don't know.
Where else could they get a second entrance?
Well, if the Wilsons would step back up, he'd probably say that there's a road right in front of him that also dead ends, and that could access it.
Well, my comment is, for those that don't know, 2175 West is the main route to the elementary school, the junior high, and the high school. The high school kids drop their brothers and sisters off at the elementary school, at the junior high, and at the high school. It's a very fast road. They've added a 3-way stop to that section right there on 4150 South. In order to get out of my driveway, I'm one of the real fortunate people that got to have my driveway directly across from the entrance to North Park. It's really hard when you're trying to back out of your driveway. You have to dodge the traffic coming out of the park and the traffic coming through those stop signs. You have to judge it. As soon as the one gets through the stop sign, if there's nobody coming from the park, you can hurry and get out. I had to go out and stop traffic for my daughter to be able to get out of our driveway the other morning. We're talking about 7:30 in the morning. If we're going to add all that traffic in, I'd like to request that if a road is created, not to allow it to come up 4150 South.
Okay.
Adding a roundabout there is not going to work. That's not going to help anybody that's trying to get out of their driveways, because then there's going to be constant traffic with no stops at all to be able to have a chance to get out.
Okay.
Lastly, I wanted to address the parking issue. I don't understand how there's only going to be 1 parking spot per townhouse. But from what I'm hearing, then they're going to be parking in front of people's houses. And I just wanted to remind everybody, take a look down at by McDonald's in West Roy and look over at those luxurious condos townhouses that they developed down there. I almost died the other day. I was down there for the first time. They were proposed as luxurious townhouses. As close together as they are, I can't imagine that anybody would look at those and think they were luxurious.
Okay.
So when a developer comes in and proposes something, you have to take it at face value that it probably isn't going to be quite like it's proposed, and maybe ask a few more questions.
Okay. Great comments. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Name and address. Thank you.
Mike Buckley, 4297 South, 2675 West. Boy, I don't envy you. I really don't. I've been coming to some of these meetings. You've probably seen me at some of them, and been involved somewhat and really concerned, just like everybody else. And I'll have to admit that some of me's changed my thoughts along the way, just from some of the things that the mayor's presented. But at the same time, I have a few questions, if I might.
Please.
First of all, 2675 West, right there where it goes into Wilson's property, is that road going straight through into the tracks, or does that depend into the station, or does that depend on development and what's proposed?
Yeah, and that's a good question. There's nothing in this proposal that suggests that the private property owner will lose their property. We're not proposing that, and Roy City has done everything you can to basically do not consider eminent domain. So the bottom line is going to be, if the property owner chooses to buy out or be bought out, and a developer comes in under the intent of developing that property and chooses to extend that road, then that would happen. But it can only happen if, in fact, the property owner elects to sell.
Okay. I know in UTA's plans, and I've lived there for 30 plus years, they've come out and surveyed for that road to go through. I've seen
Yes,
it.
it. Uh-huh.
And I walked out and asked them what they were doing, and they were surveying for UTA for that road to go through. That was years ago.
Yeah.
So this stuff's been in plans forever, not just now. If I understand the map right, UTA owns that red?
No.
No?
No, that's, 8 acres of that is actually owned by the city. So the frontage of that to 4,000
Along
is
the
actually owned by
tracks.
Roy City. Then there's about 20 acres behind that to the north that runs from the Roy City property all the way to the Hinckley Drive, that kind of a mountain right
Yeah.
there. That's owned by a private.
By private? So UTA just owns that blue,
Just the blue and a little piece of the green that's to the east of there,
the east up towards the house.
out towards the houses.
And UTA wants, that they're proposing the 50 per acre, right?
Yeah, they said 25 to 50 acres, 25 to 50 dwelling units per acre. But their 2014 TOD study, and you can pull that off the web, it specifically says for this, what they call a community station, it specifically says what they want is a 25 unit per acre.
My problem is, going back to Mr. Wilson, when he was up here, UTA seems to have a lot of say in this, and they're the money, they're the state, and I guess we have to give in to them, but anybody ever go to Mr. Wilson?
Well,
and asked him what he would like to do with his property?
Yeah, and that's important. That's the reason why for all the property owners in there. And there is more private property owners than there is public property owners in that area. And they cannot, at least we're not entertaining anything that talks about forcing anybody to sell their property on this. The only thing the city council is responsible to do to be compliant with the policy or the law the state has done is to simply says we implemented some changes in the zoning. That's all they can do. If the council comes up and says, I want to go ahead and I want to take advantage of some, like I mentioned to you, Senate Bill 217, they can do that. But that's not even being talked about. What we would like to do, and it was made at the very beginning of the conversation, we want to go back to UTA and convince UTA, because this is a community station, and there's numerous homes within walking distance of that station, we think they can get the ridership that they need in order for them not to be required to go to 50 units per acre. We think people will walk to the train station and use it because we have such a great collaboration, if you will, with the people saying is, hey, I can walk there, I'll just go there. And we think we can sell that. Okay. The piece they have a control over, and to be honest with you, they have no more control over in terms of anything that the zoning defined by this council. But their piece, and the only piece they can actually talk about, is the piece in blue and that little piece in green to the east of there. Okay. Everything else is owned by private sector.
Because I know I've seen the plans drawn up for all those roads to intersect.
Yeah. I've
seen it,
yeah.
So it's out there, everybody. Yeah. It's right here in this library.
Yeah.
And it's been there for years, so this is all, that property was already planned out.
A long
the
time
Wilson's
ago.
property.
I'm sure it
was
will.
already planned out. So I just don't think it's right that piece of property is in there. But that, aside from the point, back to 5600, and I just kind of understand a little bit the money that the state provides. I was talking to my neighbors about this, and I don't know if this is even something that can be done or not.
Please.
But Roy is a community, or a pastor's city, right? Syracuse, Cooper, West Haven, they're all driving through here.
Right.
Why can't we do toll roads? Why can't we make 4,000 a toll road? You're a Roy citizen. You're a Roy citizen. You have your pass. You have it in your window. You can go. I've been back east on the freeways, and I've stopped for all the tolls.
Yeah.
Why do we need? I'm not saying you don't need state money. You can make a lot of money, Mayor.
Oh, I agree. You don't have to go too far, but go up there to Washington Terrace and see the one on Adams Avenue.
On Adams Avenue. And I don't know if that's something the city can look into or not, but.
Well, the city owns 4,000.
4,000 and a couple of the others, the 6,000?
They own 6,000, 4,000, 48.
So there's some big bucks there.
I think so.
Anyway.
Great idea, I like that. Please, name and address.
My name is Wendy Abel, 2873 West, 5975 South. I actually live on the other side of town from the proposed area. However, I did see some issues with overflow parking during snow removal. Where are those cars going to go for the residents that live in those neighborhoods? The other thing is the train traffic. My husband works for the railroad, so I'm quite aware of how much longer the trains are getting. They're proposing up to 5-mile trains. So that takes quite some time, and that's not with the trains having to stop with issues, and there's been a lot more pull-aparts with these longer trains. So an overpass would definitely be needed and the street widened. I understand the need for affordable housing. The other thing I would suggest with the limited parking to help address the overflow in the UTA area is maybe keeping it more of a senior limited mobility resident area that will be closer to the front runner because it can't walk a half-mile down to access the train.
It's an interesting idea, thank you.
Good idea.
And we got greater train traffic just because they closed Roper Yard down in Salt Lake. So we have more trains stacking up in Ogden Yard.
Yeah.
So that's going to affect our tracks quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, and to add to that, I will indicate to you, the legislators in House Bill 433 went out there and approved UTA to double track the UTA front-runner station. We're not sure what that's going to be, but their intent is to run a speed train between Ogden and Salt Lake in 15 minutes. And now our place is already double tracked, but they're going to plan on making more track requirements so they can get that speed train to run back and forth. And so, yes, there will be a lot more trains, as you just stated. Thank you. Name and address?
Emily Atkinson, 2544 West, 4400 South. I'm all for the townhomes. I think it's a great compromise. I understand we got to be proactive on things that are coming up in the future. My concern is we have a direct view of 5 neighbors because we live up on the hill right as we're coming down 4400 on the corner there.
Okay.
And our concern with having that much visibility is having that much visibility. There's not a lot of privacy. There's a lot of sound. We hear all the trains, all the people in the neighborhood, all the dogs from all the neighborhood. I think a great idea to address would be the sound pollution that would come from higher density neighborhoods and the privacy that maybe higher fences would allow. And also, traffic has been addressed many times here, but where we live specifically, our mailbox gets hit frequently on that hill as it comes down the corner. We can't have a permanent mailbox because it just gets struck so many times. We just are concerned what that would do to the homes in our little corner as far as the traffic goes for that specifically. That's all we have.
Perfect. Thank you. Great comments. Please, name and address. Thank you.
Name and address, Roger Bordley, 2035 West, 4225 South, Ross.
Get really close to the mic.
There you go.
Sorry.
There you go.
We got Roger Bordley, 2035 West, 4225 South, across the park. Across the park. So, let me kind of clear on this. Who owns that property?
Which one specifically?
All the stuff down there by the UTA stuff. Do they own
Well,
that?
I'll point it out to you. The area in blue with the blue checkers owned by UTA. The piece of property just a little bit east of there, the green property, some of that's owned by UTA, but there's 2 pieces in there owned by Roy City. The piece that's south of there, so you're looking on the bottom part, is owned by a private hands, and that's owned by the Wilsons. He just talked about that. The green piece that runs up between the track and the trail, that's all private property. I can give you some of the names of the people, but that's private property. Just north of 4,000 where the red is actually 8 acres of that. The frontage of that 4,000 is owned by Roy City, and the 20 acres further north up to Hinckley Drive is owned by the Hanson family.
Right.
So those are all the principals. If you go east of there, the yellow stuff, you're dealing with the school district, the library, which is owned by the county, and of course over to Iomega and American First Credit Union.
Okay, so to be clear, is it basically UTA has total control over,
No.
they will, that they put what they want there?
No.
Or they put what they want there?
No, and that's why this is important, because the law today says that this council right here will decide what can go in there and what don't. And what we want to do is to make sure that we retain that. So as long as Roy City is moving in the right direction, I think we can sound off, push off anybody who has a different opinion. It's the concern if we don't do something, I'm more concerned about that if we don't do something, someone will come in and do it for us, and that worries me.
Well, somebody, is the UTA the one to come in and do it for you?
It can't today.
Can't do it.
But all it requires the legislators to change the law, and they can do it tomorrow. And I'm saying as I'm concerned about that.
So the state has control over zoning 1,000 feet either way of the UTA stations?
No.
Still does?
No, it's all up to these.
So can Roy City just buy all the darn property?
That's an interesting thought.
Just bond for it, let's buy it, we'll do what we want. We'll plant grass and trees and it'll be a wonderful community.
That's an interesting part. It's owned by the state technically, because UTA owns it. But to your question is that we've never really thought about the city purchasing any of that property.
Why not? That would seem to be really straightforward.
Yeah, it could be.
And we could plant plenty of trees and grass. I mean, if it's only $500 a person in Roy or something like that, or 200, I'll give you mine.
That's an interesting thought.
If it's out of whack, let me know. What doesn't make sense about it, please.
Well, it's not a matter of making sense. I think the going price for property, and particularly a property like that, would be close to $100,000 an acre. So to basically get 18 or 20 acres, you're talking about coming up with $2 million. Our budget we have for the entire city is roughly it's roughly $20 million. And so you're really talking about coming up with 10% of that. That's assuming UTA would have any interest to want to sell it.
Right. Well, how many households do we have in Roy? 20,000?
We have residents, we have around 40,000 people with 15,000 residential addresses.
You're talking $150 a household? Just buy it.
You bring an interesting point to the table. Thank you. Okay, please. By the way, we need to hurry because they're going to plan on closing this at 9 o'clock, so it's important that we try to get there. Please, your name and address?
Lacey Softwell. My address is 4298 South, 2675 West.
Thank you.
I'm not going to dispute a lot of the things. I live right next to the Wilson's property. I work Wilson's property. And so I fully agree with them, but my concern is, and I'm just trying to understand, on the downtown property, they're putting walls, aren't they? Or like wall barriers to protect the residents or the existing people that are living there from what they're building. Is that correct?
There can be. It depends on the development. The ordinance basically says that if it's within a certain distance of so you have commercial next to residential, there is a requirement that basically says they may have to be responsible to put a wall up there. So the development could require that, yes.
Okay. As a business owner, and something that we're concerned with, or at least I am, is vandalism and trespassing and just theft in general. I mean, we are hidden back there already, and it's kind of nice, but we already have people that will just pull into the orchard, fill their shirts with as many peaches as they can, and run, and things like that. And the few people that come through the orchard, we're not too particular about, as long as they're respectful, we don't mind. But with putting all of that, especially at the UTA, for our property, as well as those houses, I think that if they could consider putting a barrier, I would prefer a wall, a tall wall, not a fence. I'd rather them not even see the trees, so that they don't even get the idea to hopefully just give us that privacy from what's going to be built.
Interesting.
If you could consider that, we would appreciate it.
That bring up an interesting point. We have not heard that. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
My name's Brianne Hymas. It's 2578 West, 4850 South in
Thank
Rye.
you.
So my main question is, with these private properties, I don't think private properties should be on the bill. But with that, they are mainly farming properties. I grew up in Brigham. Look at how many orchards, how many farming properties have been sold and rezoned to be houses. What are you going to do when we no longer have those farming properties? Where are you going to get your fresh, I mean, you can get fresh produce shipped in from California and other places. It's not the same thing. It's not worth it. So my question is, if you rezone these, even though they're private properties, are they, like if Wilson's decide to sell, are those now, they can no longer be greenbelt, they can no longer be farmed, they have to be developed?
Good question. First thing is that, as I stated, the Royce City is not making any forcing action here. We're simply going up there and making a proposal to look at a zoning. I will indicate to you one of the challenges that any development, these developments in particular, if it changes the zoning, the property value is going to go right through the roof. And the fact of the matter is, and that's typically what we've seen in a lot of the farms, down on 6,000, lower part down there towards Hooper, we had children got the property, the parents died off, got the property. The parents, I think, thought they were going to hold that 10, 15 acres forever. I don't think it lasted a year, and the children came in, they became ownership, they got it zoned, they got it changed, and they subdivided it. We set the standard in terms of subdividing, but any property owner, whether it be the Wilsons or any one of them, can come in here today.
The library will close in 15 minutes.
Can basically
Any materials you need to check out must be checked out in the next 15 minutes. Thank you.
Can come in and actually request from the city to rezone it. So your question is, we're not saying it can't be, we just don't have control over a lot of that part of it. Usually it's up to the families.
Yes, and so I guess my ultimate thing is yes, it's ultimately your guys' decision if it's on the bill. And the fact that it's private property, I don't even think it should be even discussed at this point. I just feel like for any of them, it should not be discussed. And it should be left as an opportunity to have those farming grounds.
Okay, well, thank you for your opinion.
Steve.
Please, we'll take two more. Obviously, we've got to close down as soon as we can. Please, name and address.
Charles Ivester, 4299 South, 2675 West. I agree with everything that Byron said and Leon Wilson.
Okay.
Get the private property off of it.
Okay.
I don't care if there's proposals to develop or not. That would be their prodigy's decision to make. And I don't recall anything from UTA when they put the proposal on the ballot to even have the front runner in the first place, ever having this big, broad reach. I mean, I feel like we're on Empire Strikes Back when Darth Vader's sitting at the end of the table saying, I've altered the deal, pray I don't alter it more.
Understand.
So somebody's got to rein in the state.
Yes.
If I wanted to live in Salt Lake, I'd be in Salt Lake. You know?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your input. Thanks. Okay, one more, please.
I'm here to give the benediction. Bill Marks, 5705 South, 2325 West. I live a long way away. I don't care what's going on in here.
Go ahead, Bill.
However, one thing you might want to think about, we talk about townhomes and one parking place per townhome.
Correct.
I own a townhome in North Salt Lake where everybody has 2 parking places, and that is not enough.
Yeah.
People who live in townhomes have kids, and all those kids ultimately become 16, and they all get a driver's license, and they all have a car, and you got a mess. We need probably 4 parking spaces per unit if we're going to do townhomes. And don't even think about anything less than that. It's not going to work. Something else. Much of this conversation is prefaced on Northrop Grumman coming to Hill Air Force Base.
It's surely one of them, yes.
You know, the only way people living in this development we're talking about are going to get to Hill Air Force Base is via bus that goes up 4,000, which is going to exacerbate the problem even worse. Front runner, you can get on here, the next stop is in Sunset or wherever. This train station is developed to take people to Salt Lake. That's what it was developed for, that's what it's used for now, and putting a lot of people here is not going to help. You might think about, oh, all these high-paid executives coming into Northrop. They're not going to live here. They're going to Syracuse and some places where they can have a backyard and they can afford $500,000 for a house or more. I have a daughter that works for a construction company and they're building houses in Lehigh. And nothing sells for less than $6. Just think about that. You know, whatever we put up here is in the noise. The other thing is, I noticed that Senator Buxton is not here. I hope he was invited.
Personally.
Specifically.
Personally. I invited him.
I've sent him 2 emails this year and have not gotten a response from him on either item. Maybe we ought to think about who exactly voted for these bills that are forcing us into this hole, and maybe this crowd ought to think about we need a new senator.
Hey, we do appreciate all the inputs. I've got a big list.
Ladies and gentlemen, the library will close.
It's going to close. So thank you for coming.
Checked out in the next 10 minutes.
There is an attendance list running around with some email on there. Please get your name on it. Very important. And thank you for attending. This is obviously no decision tonight, but we'll keep you posted as this continues. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I need a motion to end.
What's that?
I need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, yes. Hold on there.
Council?
Yes.
I just need a motion to adjourn.
So she can get this. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn this? Okay, Jan gave me a motion.
I'll second.
Who said the second?